Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table Lay Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello and welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. I'm your host, Tim Burch, and today we've got a fascinating discussion. It's something that, I'll be honest with you, kind of caught me off guard out of the blue, and I had a few people reach out to me and send me this young man's paper that he did for school. Very, very fascinating. It's to me, it's a fresh, unadulterated look at what's going on with the surveying profession. And so, you know what? We just decided to see if he'd want to jump on and have a conversation about it. And we wanted to bring in his college instructor and say what's going on, as far as the education of surveyors and such. So without further ado, let me introduce Jessica Hess. Jessica, tell me what your full title there is at Vincennes. I don't want to screw it up.
We just got new titles this year, actually. So I used to be program coordinator. Now I'm program director of surveying technology here at Vincennes University. And I've been doing that for this is my 9th year, I think, starting here. So.
Well, and there's Vincennes has a close, is near and dear to the NSPS heart, because for years and years, we worked with Vincennes, with the CST program, with Debbie there at the center, and also the chair of CST, Art Hayes, for many, many years. We think the world of Art. I know he's retired and in Florida now, but he was a big force behind the CST program. So that's what, when I saw all this was coming out of Vincennes, it just, like I said, just kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling because of all the great times and interactions we've had with Vincennes. And then also Parker is it Zurbuch? Zurbuch?
Zurbuch.
Zurbuch.
Yeah, it's a nice German pronunciation.
Very good. Very good. Well, like I said, I came across your article, and several other people sent it on. Tell us a little bit about why are you going to Vincennes? What was the attraction to get to Vincennes for your surveying education?
Yeah, well, I started my kind of post-secondary education late. I started when I was 22 with my freshman year of college, and I started at a local Purdue outlet here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Purdue Fort Wayne, in their civil engineering program. And kind of lo and behold, life kind of took hold, and I got married 2 years into that program and realized like it wasn't possible for me to continue kind of normal schooling, you could say. And I had also, through that civil engineering program, had some classes on surveying, basic surveying, and really fell in love and was talking with my professor there, and he tipped me off to Vincennes' program, which is the only one, I believe, Jessica, in Indiana currently.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so he tipped me off to that and said, hey, like this might be perfect because they're starting an online portion of this too. So not only was my interest veering towards surveying like heavily, but also it worked out perfectly with my life situation, with getting married, starting a family, having kids, and being able to continue education with all of that going on while I worked full time. So it was really a godsend for me, Vincennes University. And when I initially reached out to Jessica, she was just incredibly gracious in helping me work through my situation, all my credits, and how I could pursue licensure and pursue the degrees. Just really straightening the path for me and making it really clear. It was wonderful.
Well, that's great. Jessica, back to you for a second. I guess what led what led up to getting you into teaching surveying? What every surveyor has a story. So
Right.
what's your story?
Well, I'm a graduate of the Vincennes University program and a lifelong resident of Knox County here, which is where Vincennes University is located. So I was working in a coal mine, actually. I'd been there for about 6 years and I liked it. I liked the work and everything. But Bill Clark, who had taught here in the program for many, many years, said, "Hey, we're looking to make some transitions. It's about time for me to retire. And would you be interested in taking on this role?" And honestly, I was a little bit hesitant because I was like, I like doing surveying. I don't know what it's going to be like to switch to talking about surveying all the time. But I mean, in my role at the mine, I was a supervisor of the surveying department and had been in the position where we needed to hire surveyors and had worked with young surveyors and thought, we need to continue it on. There needs to be somebody there who cares and is going to put the time into it. And so I went ahead and took that leap, and that's what got me into the teaching role here. And they don't really prepare you for here's what teaching is in college. They're just kind of like, okay, here you go. There's your classes you're going to do. So it was a learning curve, but it's turned out well. And I'm happy we've been able to grow the program and do the online stuff. Like Parker's kind of at an interesting position in it because we were, I would say, maybe kind of halfway into it. We had some of our classes online, but not completely. So I think there's a few he had to pick up maybe at like Cincinnati State or whatnot. But
Right. Yeah.
for the most part, that's how I ended up in this spot here.
Nice. Well, I would like to think if the pandemic didn't teach us anything, it did teach us that online education is a viable option for a lot of things, and especially when it comes to surveying. Yeah, I think it is something that's, and we'll get into that a little bit more with Parker's article. But Parker, how about you? I mean, how did you fall into surveying?
Well, like I said earlier, it was through that initial surveying course in a civil engineering program, and then just through that professor reaching out to Jessica, and everything kind of fell in place after that. I started working full time at a surveying firm, whereas previously I was working at an engineering firm, and so the clock kind of started ticking there on my experience. And in Indiana, I think in particular I love Indiana's system for the combination of education and experience that's allowed for licensure. You can combine things. If you're going to school part-time and you're working full-time, they'll still count your work experience that you're getting full-time, even if you haven't completed the degree. And that's really worked out in my favor for sure, and made kind of the process just a lot smoother. But yeah, it all started with an initial basics of surveying course, and I fell in love. I really did. And then through working and going through the classes at Vincennes, it just became clearer and clearer that this was a very, very good move for me.
All right. Well, good. Well, you know what? Let's jump into your paper, your article, because I guess I'm curious. What was the inspiration? What drove you to want to dig a little deeper? I mean, we see the shortages, not, and you dig into it in your paper somewhat. I mean, it's not just surveying, but we do have
Right.
labor shortages out there. And so I guess what drove you to want to put together this kind of research? I mean, obviously it was for a class, but it was also something that really helped you get to forecast and look at your profession just a little bit differently for what you've got to potentially encounter going down the road.
Right. Yeah. What it was I mean, I've known about the shortage, but I didn't really feel it until I came into my current position at the company that I work at, because it's a position where I'm looking for people to hire, particularly drafters, other surveyors, things like that, people with any sort of surveying knowledge, field crew personnel. So and it became rapidly apparent that it's very, very difficult to hire anybody in the surveying field right now with any sort of experience without starting them from the ground up, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to start people from the ground up, but it just pulls a lot more resources when you do that. And realizing that just how difficult it is to hire right now was one very big impetus. And then when I've throughout my career thus far, when I've been transitioning from one company to another, searching for jobs, how easy it was to find a job, and particularly how many companies were vying for me to work there. Like my last switch, I think I had something like 8 offers to choose
Yeah.
from just within my local community, you know. And it's great. It's also overwhelming at the same time, and it's daunting because you know, the workloads. It's hard to keep up with all the work that's out there right now, and it makes work-life balance a particularly hard thing to strike, and then it makes it hard to hire people on the flip side. So that was kind of, once I got into a hiring position where I was trying to look for personnel, it really became clear to me how dire this situation is. So I wanted to look at the causes, and that's kind of what led to this paper.
Sure. Jessica, I guess for him to select this type of a subject, I mean, was there anything that you had a hand in anything with this? Did you, I mean, help him with research? I mean, with anything with this, or is this just something Parker took and ran with?
So this is something Parker just took and ran with. At our program here at Vincennes, we're a little bit different because I'm over the surveying portion, but we have our like our Bachelor of Technology teachers and program chair and whatever. So they kind of handle this type of class. Was more of a research class, a general. He could have done it on anything, but he chose it. So I mean, when I saw it, I was super happy because I'd had conversations with various people, you know, talking about the exact same thing. Why is there a shortage? I don't really understand, but not having the time to dig in like he had to do for the project, I was excited to see what kind of information he came up with. And it was definitely interesting and eye-opening.
So I guess, Parker, what were the parameters? I mean, that you decided to take this down your profession? I mean, it sounds like to me you could have written, you know, a technical paper on just about anything.
Yeah.
I guess what made you gravitate to doing something with your profession, which is admirable, by the way.
Well, I mean, I kind of live and breathe surveying right now, so it was on my mind. It was you know, I've been in the process of trying to hire people for the last 9 months or so, and it was forefront in my mind, and I thought, you know, this is something I'm really interested in right now, a topic that I'm particularly I think like poised to investigate. And so that's kind of what I did. I just kind of took that inspiration and ran with it, kind of like Jessica said. So.
Right. Well, I guess, and so in digging into your research, I mean, I like the way you laid it out, but the one chapter that really stands out for me is why does the shortage exist? You know, unfortunately, having been through the 2008 recession, I can give you a bunch of things that happened there, but let's not digress on the past.
Sure.
But you know, I guess of the 11 things that you've laid out here, what are the strongest characteristics of the reason why there's this shortage? Why here and now in 2024? You're right. The recession of 2008 did a whole bunch, but you know, fast forward 16 years, what are the strongest factors here that you feel that are really playing into this shortage?
Yeah. So in my research, it became apparent, I guess, if I was to boil them down, these 11 different aspects or causes, if I was to boil them down, it would probably come down to awareness, because that that kind of reaches into a lot of the other subtopics like lack of interest, education, even pay, and then the aging workforce. So just the current the demographics as they currently are in America and Europe, where the older generation, like called the baby boomer generation, right, is the largest generation that we have, and the ones younger are trying to kind of fill in that void as the baby boomers retire. And we haven't really experienced something like that as a society before, particularly in America. And we're kind of at the beginnings of it, I would say, but that's definitely a really big factor in all this. And then the third was just related to the aging workforce, was that our population is not growing as a society in the West in general, and so we don't have the personnel coming in to fill up the gap left by the older generation. So I think it really comes down to demographics and then awareness, I think, if I were to boil it down to two things. And to me, my conclusion in the paper was that the most core issue is that of demographics, but it's the hardest to change. It takes the longest to change. It's a complete societal issue, not only just related to surveying. And yeah, there's nothing we can really do about it in the short term. So the other main point of awareness is really where I think we can hone in the short term and make some hopefully quicker changes.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one thing you did note in here that I want to ask you about was technological advancements. We've seen a radical amount of technology that have come into the surveying profession. I know within my career. I mean, if you just said when I first started, the whole idea of GPS and some of the remote sensing things, I would have said, no way, you're talking George Jetson type stuff. But the fact is that it's here and it's moved through. Now, the other thing that goes along with that is we've had a reduction in crew size to where it's much easier to go from, back in my day, Sonny, it was all 3-man crews. And then we went to 2 with a robot sometimes, and then now we're, a lot of places are running 1-man crews, which to me, if you step back as a non-surveyor, step back and look at it, go, well, we've had a reduction in people, simply the need because of the reduction in necessary people being out there. But my question to you now is, even though you've got this highly technical, highly advanced piece of equipment, and you're being sent out there to go do these things, how are you being trained? How are we learning organically through experience by doing this? Are we missing something here that we maybe need to change that cycle to go along with the advanced technology?
I think, well, so like in my personal experience thus far, one of the most challenging things related to like learning organically is that there aren't a lot of experienced surveyors to go around, right? Most companies only have 1, maybe 2, unless they're very large. And even if they're larger, they might only have 1 or 2 in their particular branch who can directly oversee other surveyors. So on the side of younger people gaining experience, that's definitely a speed bump, you could say. And I've definitely felt that in my own career, like that if my boss is busy, running his company, he isn't maybe as available as I would wish, per se. Now, my boss currently is very, very good about this, but the lack of mentorship of older, experienced surveyors is hard to come by. and it's just not as prevalent, I think, maybe as it used to be. And that definitely puts kind of a wrench in things. So as regards learning organically, that's kind of what I would say about that.
Oh, exactly. No, that's good. Jessica, I'm gonna throw back at you for a second. As someone putting together survey curriculum, survey programs, and trying to basically build students that are going to fulfill these needs, how much of a pressure does that put on a program and to build that curriculum that these students really almost need to be workforce ready coming out with this advanced technology? I mean, how do you go about training that as
Right.
quickly as possible?
Well, I mean, VU has always had a reputation of putting out people who are ready to hit the ground running. As far as, I mean, we've had our traditional program for around 35 to 40 years now. And so I think we just put a lot of focus on doing projects and redoing projects, not redoing the same thing, but you know what I mean? A lot of that hands-on. And I'm talking about this more from our traditional student standpoint.
Right,
A
right.
lot of our online students are already working in surveying when they come to us to take classes. So they're really kind of leveling up and they are already having that online hands-on experience there. But with our traditional students, I still hear pretty good news about they're ready when we've hired them. So, I mean, I think having been in the program myself and experiencing it, I'm just thinking we're just doing business as usual here. I don't feel a ton of pressure, like I'm not hitting the mark with them or anything like that. You know what I mean?
That's excellent.
The equipment and the technology, I think, to go back to kind of that experience aspect, we're having people out there with one-man crews and whatnot. The technology is a little bit misleading in that it's easy to operate, you know, so they probably don't need as much help with how do I operate this equipment as we did 20 years ago when it was so manual. Which buttons do I push? How do I set this up?
Yeah,
How do we pull this? What do we do? And I think that's probably kind of pushed things the way they've gone also. Well, we don't need two people standing around looking at that data collector, holding it, you know, but it's where do we go? Where do we look for stuff? How do I measure this in? And that's the stuff that's getting lost. Not so much the technology isn't hard. It's the random one-off, what do we do when this happens? Or what
right.
about in this situation? And we just try to throw them in those random situations as much as we can here on campus to generate that. So
That's excellent. Parker, I want to go back to just a couple quick things as far as your causes
Yeah.
that did stand out to me. Um, the lack of globalization efforts. I like where you went there simply because you are absolutely 100% on the money. We are not alone. We have contemporaries from around the world with and I love that you cited FIG for some of these things as well. That bottom line is we're not alone, and we're having these same struggles around the world trying to find people. What, I guess, in your research, was that what was that kind of I guess further validation of that we're following a same track, or was this kind of a whoa, we're not alone in this? How did you feel when you were coming across that research?
Yeah, I think it definitely made it apparent that the United States and even just like the Western world, including Europe in general, is not uh, alone in this situation. Um, but I think that the main point of the lack of globalization efforts really that was being made by people like the Rob 2007. I'm forgetting his first name at the moment, the writer, but he was making the point that because of a lack of globalization, surveyors have a lack of a united vision internationally, and we become fragmented. So then, because we're not able to kind of grab hold of that momentum on an international level, it kind of hamstrings us. from being able to increase our awareness to the general public, because on an international level, that's where, just gobs and gobs of resources come in and things like that, in order to promote, in order to make the profession more well known. But because surveyors, by kind of the nature of surveying in a lot of ways, at least the legal aspect of it, it's by nature segmented into different provinces, states, countries, whatever you might have. It becomes very localized by necessity, and therefore makes it difficult to globalize. So I think the whole point there was just to say that if we make better efforts at globalization, despite all of the differences in each locality, if we make better efforts at globalization, we will therefore have better outcomes with awareness and bringing people into the profession.
Exactly. No, that very well stated, because it's amazing to me, even though we do a lot of different types of tasks in surveying around the world. I mean, the way they classify surveys in the UK. I mean, even what we call an appraiser is considered a surveyor, which is,
Right.
it's foreign to us, but that's natural to them. And then like I like what you did, some of the things you commented about some of the places like Africa. It's amazing that there's not too many boundary surveyors there, because they don't worry about property rights in a lot of places. It's more about topography and construction and various other things. So
Right.
yeah, you're absolutely right, which is great. The one last thing I want to touch on as far as the causes, which being, I mean, I'm not afraid to say it. You're a much younger man than I am. You're of a younger generation, which is nice to hear some of these things. Except, when the last one was lack of status, respect, and professional standing.
Sure.
To have, I guess, to have someone in your position really look at that and go, we are a profession. Why can't we earn that respect and that status? I like that you've pointed this out, because I feel the same way, that it's something that we have dragged behind on. So, I mean, give me a little bit of your attitude, your take on when you were digging into this. Why is there such it's not really it's not disrespect, it's just a lack of respect of who
Yeah.
we are.
Right. I think in general popular culture, if people know about surveyors, they kind of will lump us in with the trades, and maybe that's because in certain places, linemen and chainmen and things like that they're unionized, and they are part of what some people might consider a trade, right? And so professional, if you were divide the workforce into two categories of professional and the trades, then surveyors are kind of in a weird position there, because there's a lot of us that some might consider to be tradesmen, and then others, the professional land surveyors would be considered professionals. And as to the causes of that, I'm not entirely sure. That kind of goes past what my research was aimed at. But understanding that it is a cause that we need to take more,
Exactly.
that we need to look into further, I think is really what I was trying to bring out.
No, and I think you did. I think you did. You stating that within the paper was quite appropriate. Simply the fact that I think that's something that the surveying profession has always, we've had a little chip on our shoulders of who we are and what we bring to the table as far as the construction world, the engineering world, and such. I'm glad that you spotlighted it here.
And I want to say further that
Yeah.
on this, that the lack of status, professional standing, like I see it personally. I see the status, respect, and professional standing kind of increasing, but that's ironically because the number of surveyors are decreasing, and so by kind of the law of scarcity, we're starting to see higher salaries coming out into the workforce, and we're starting to see, therefore, higher respect. And that's kind of an unintended consequence of the shortage, or I guess it's not an unintended consequence, but an ironic consequence of the shortage.
Well, that's yeah, no, that you're exactly right. Because what I was going to say, sorry to interrupt you, that what I was going to say was that I think you are right. The tide is turning. It's a slow moving boat. It's an ocean liner that's trying to turn on a dime. But that's something that I'd like to say that we've seen here even at NSPS with the Young Surveyors Network, and seeing some of the younger surveyors that are putting up their own shingle, doing their own things, becoming leaders in the profession, and doing more to earn that respect. And so, kudos for calling that out, that it has been there, and that, but to also say that it is turning. I think it is, but it's not going to turn around overnight. Which
no,
it's something that we're going to get there. Going into your proposed solutions, I mean, you've got a couple of great ideas, increased awareness, increased diversity, a few things. And there's not one magic silver bullet to any of this, obviously, or hey, we would have done it a long time ago. Based upon your what you've read through here, what you've done your research here and wrote here, what's just a general course of action that the surveying profession needs to take based upon what you've delved into?
So I do think one of the most practical solutions that we can implement is increased wages. I think that's that can be a difficult thing to do, especially in like local environments, because you have like price fixing laws and all that sort of stuff, right? It's not like we can all get together and determine to raise our prices by X amount. But out of those solutions, I would say increasing wages is the most practical, and maybe the quickest to implement, and it would probably have implications on increased awareness, increased diversity, increased globalization, and professional status. Because as a professional makes more, society, for probably good reason, seems to hold them in a higher status. And as a particular professional makes more, then I think the opportunities at globalization increase as well, because you have more resources. Then diversity, it would help diversity in that people would want to get into the profession if it was a well-paying profession when compared to others. And then also it would increase the awareness. So as regards a very practical solution, I think that's probably the most practical.
Very good.
But difficult to implement nonetheless.
Oh, sure. Exactly. Okay. So great paper. You're pushing forward on your education, along with, at the same time of doing it, pushing your career along. What are some of the goals for your career? What's going to be your end goal for getting this degree, getting everything forward? What do you look to accomplish in your career?
Well, hopefully within the next few months, I'll be taking the professional surveyor's exam and the state exam here in Indiana.
Nice.
My application's into the board, so that's an immediate goal, is to pass those exams. And then, it might sound a bit cliche, but really trying to be the best surveyor that I can. Trying to diversify my skills as best as possible. And I'm uh, I also have an interest in continuing my education. As I said, I started in a civil engineering program, and the engineering side has always interested me as well. So if I take a few more classes, I could potentially go that route as well, but we'll see about that. Surveying, I will say, and this is not just because I'm on a surveying podcast, but surveying interests me a lot more than civil engineering. But I think the relation between the two is enticing to me. So there's that, and then yeah, continuing my career forward. Yeah, so that's kind of the goals.
Well, I guess one of the other questions I have for you there is, well, I foresee you, you probably are already going down this path as a mentor, but what do you see, what characteristics do you look for in having a mentor, having someone to help you, to guide you, to offer you practical advice? What resonates with you?
I think some of the best mentors I've ever had, one of the most characteristics was that they weren't just willing to tell me what to do. They were willing to tell me and show me, but also let me learn on my own, and make my own mistakes as well. And so that was particularly, and has been particularly useful for me. A micromanaging manager or boss can be very stifling, I think, to somebody's career. But having someone who's a very good balance of being able to sit back and let the person learn on their own, yet also knowing when to come in and offer guidance where necessary. I think it's a hard balance to strike for sure. But the best mentors that I've ever had in my life, whether in surveying or other places, they were able to strike that balance, generally speaking. So
Nice, very good. Jessica, okay, so we want to go back to the education side for a little bit here. Teaching in this day and age can't be easy. I guess, it's good to be in teaching a profession you love. What motivates you? What drives you to want to keep teaching surveying? Is there anything in particular that gets you up in the morning?
I mean, just the need for surveyors that we have in the profession is the number one driver. I mean, every week I'm getting contacted by employers. We need to hire people. We need to hire people. So number one, that, but the second part of that is this is a great profession. Like, I love being in it. I enjoy what I do and the work I've done and the people that I know, and just, excited to share that with other people. Hey, this is really great. Students should come in, they should do this. You have a great career in front of you, great friendships that you can make. And so first off, just connecting them up with those opportunities and sharing, this is great opportunities. Like, you can make a great career in surveying. Also, just when I have helped someone, Parker, for example, who's trying to find options to, hey, I want to get into the career more than I already am. What can I do? Just helping people connect the dots of getting them from point A to point B and meeting their goals. And, that is very rewarding within itself. When students contact me and say, I'm getting ready to take the test, can you fill out a reference sheet for me? Or I passed this, or I got promoted to this position, or whatever. Like, it feels a little bit like a win for myself as well, because it's like, great, I remember you were struggling way back here and now you're doing this, and that's awesome. So I mean, those little things, but then also I like surveying. So being able to get out there and talk about it and show students, and whenever they understand and realize something for the first time, or they finally master it, it's like, yay. So now let's move on to the next step. And I just enjoy it all around. So
that's awesome. Well, the other question I have for you, directly with higher education, I mean, that's one knock that's on the millennials, Gen Z, is they want to do things quick. They want to do things fast. It's a gig economy. If I'm going to be in school for 4+ years, I'm going to be an engineer, doctor, lawyer, whatever. Um, I guess tell us from your perspective why it is important that we do have higher education, secondary education for surveying, that there are things beyond just pushing buttons and collecting data that really require a little more thought, and it makes that career more worthwhile.
Right. So this kind of goes back to some of the points in Parker's paper where we talked about the professionalism involved here. And I mean, yes, we go out and we do field work and we do measurements and whatever, but we also need to be able to write reports that are intelligent, and we need to be able to speak in, government agency meetings when we're trying to get approvals for projects we've been working on or making pitches to different developers and whatever. And we need to have an understanding of the dynamics in our communities, like our social issues that we're dealing with, because honestly, we don't think of ourselves as being an influence to how societies kind of form, but we're laying out communities, we're laying out, where commerce areas are being developed and built, and we do have an influence in that. And so the reason for higher education, probably those areas that people are less interested in, the general studies and whatnot, like that helps polish people up to be in those professional positions that is going to help us garner that respect we're trying to earn. So I know a lot of my students are like, I love all my surveying classes and I'm not so wild about the non-surveying classes, but I'm like, we need those. You don't understand. Like when you get out there and you're finally ready to start putting your stamp on things, you're going to want to feel confident that it is professional and it looks good and it's going to hold up. So.
Oh, exactly. I can't tell you, though, to your point, how many both Gen X and baby boomers are horrible communicators, horrible, horrible at English, any of this stuff. So you're right. Laying the foundation for a lot of these soft skills are very important. Being cognizant of your time, and I appreciate you both coming on. So I got one last question for you both. Jess, you first. How does the future of surveying look to you?
I mean, honestly, I'm excited about it. You kind of get in these conversations where there's doom and gloom and, how are we going to pull through? There's no one coming into the profession, whatever. But I mean, in the last few years, there's been a big push within our state, Indiana, and I've seen it nationally. People are really starting to band together and try to raise awareness about it. We are having great advancements with technology. We're able to do more and interesting things with measurement that we haven't been able to do before. So I'm kind of a perpetual optimist, but I think the future looks good and I'm excited to see what's coming down the line.
Yeah, that's true. Parker, same question to you. How's the future look? I mean, being there in Indiana, which I've got to say, my wife's from Kokomo, so I've spent a lot of time in Indiana. There's a lot of great surveyors that have come out of Indiana. Gary Kent, I'm good friends with Rich Hudson, Tony Gregory. I would say Ryan Swingley, but he'll get a big head about it, so we'll leave Ryan out of it. Rodney Kelly, and and everybody at ISPLS, great surveyor. So Parker, you're going down a great path there. So how does the future of surveying look to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that the shortage is definitely a real problem, but at the same time, there have been benefits because of it. Namely, the increase in opportunities for surveyors. There's no lack of jobs out there open, and also pay has been significantly increasing, not just because of the inflation over the last number of years, but also because of the supply and demand issue that we're having. And so that benefits individuals quite a lot. So for people that are getting into the profession or are currently in the profession, the shortage benefits them in that way. But then it also has its own disadvantages, which we've talked about. So it just kind of depends on how are you wanting to take what life brings at you, and what are we going to do as a profession to kind of roll with the punches and continue climbing. So I think that's really what the future looks like. Is it's how we deal with it and the actions we take moving forward.
Excellent. Those are some strong finishing words. Thank you very much. You know what? I'm glad I'm recording this because I'm going to write those down. That's excellent. Quite excellent. Well, once again, thank you both for joining me. And like I said, being able to share Parker's paper and really talk about the state of surveying and the fact that we do need to stay cognizant of we do need to keep looking, need backfilling, and continue to educate, promote, and advocate for who we are. So thank you both. Appreciate it. Once again, big shout out to our friends at Vincennes. Great university. You know what? While I'm thinking about it, I do have one last thing for you, Jess. You want to give a little plug for your summer survey camp?
Oh yeah, great. So we've done 3 years of our summer surveying camp, and back to Parker's paper when he talks about awareness of trying to raise that for surveying. This is just one of those little things, you take a little bite and try to make a little dent, and the surveying camp was one of those. I was like, let's just try it. I don't know how many students will come into it, but it's been a success, and we've had students every year come into the program after they've tried the camp. So
nice.
It's definitely paying off for us, and we're reaching students little by little, but we're doing it.
So where do we send somebody to keep an eye out for that? Just send them to.
Normally our registration opens up in January every year. So just on our Vincennes University website, you can find information for it. And then also the Indiana Society of Professional Land Surveyors chapter director usually sends information out, and we'll have it posted on that website too. So
all right, well, I'll tell you what, we'll gather it up. We'll post it out there on the NSPS socials for you as well, because I've heard nothing but great things coming out of that week and the way it's building. So kudos for putting it on, and kudos for caring about and giving back to the profession. So thanks to everyone involved there. Well, that'll wrap us up for this week's episode of Surveyor Says. Wherever you listen to the podcast, hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.